a city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Monday night. We're live, we're national, and the phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 8334-VALDEZ. And rest assured, amigos, that the Democrats are all in one place at the Democrat National Convention, and stealing a page from the Trump playbook yet again, Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, who's scheduled to give her speech on the fourth day of the convention, right, at the end of the week. She came out tonight and she gave some words, just like Trump did. Now, Trump didn't really give words. I think he just came out and kind of waved, said hello. But, he showed face, and it was a big deal. And she showed face, but decided to take it a step further and say a few things, even before President Biden got to speak, which I thought was interesting, right? You're supposed to be gracious in these situations. And look, I understand. I'm the pot calling the kettle black here. I'm not the most gracious individual myself, but I think at events like this, you've got to be gracious and just allow Biden to do his torch passing and say they're moving forward and let him have his moment. This is his last big primetime address, unless he does another Oval Office address or, something big happens. But even that won't be a political speech unless he makes it into one. But for the most part, this is it. This is his final speech. He'll do a farewell address, I'm sure. But, he may not, right? You never know. It's Joe Biden. He may forget what's going on. And she came out surprising the crowd. Instead of just doing a wave and going to her section, she decided to say a few words. Listen to this.
This is going to be a great week. And I want to kick us off by celebrating our incredible President, Joe Biden, who will be speaking later tonight. Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
Now, what's interesting here is that she's there, hello, goodbye, all of this and all of that stuff, right? Everything is hunky-dory. Meanwhile, she's announced a tax hike on the corporate tax to 28%. And this, in my opinion, this is waging war on businesses all across the country. You think she cares? Of course not. And it's just fascinating to me. I saw something over the weekend where they asked her a question about, what do you plan to do? I might have sent that audio. I don't remember if I did. But they asked her, what do you plan to do with the economy? And she says, we've got to help people, do more. They've got to own homes. That's why we're giving people $25,000 for first-time home buyers. And I thought to myself, so you're saying you're going to stimulate the economy by more government spending, giving people $25,000 for a first-time home buyer? And again, it sounds great for the first-time home buyer, really does. But it doesn't sound good for America, and it's not going to stimulate the economy. I mean, it may stimulate a little bit of first-time home buying, a little bit. Not nearly as much as sending COVID checks out. And look at what that did, right? There's a catch-22 here. If you do all of that, we're going to see inflation again. We already went through this. Why would we go through it again? Because Kamala Harris is just that. So bad. Now, she's there at the convention. Hillary Clinton just took the stage and gave her remarks. We've got some reaction to all of that stuff tonight from our guests. We've got Josh Hammer that's going to be joining us later. You know him from Newsweek. We've also got Craig Huey, He's the author of the book, The Christian Voter, How to Vote For, Not Against Your Values to Transform Culture and Politics. And we're going to talk about that and the 10 shocking dangers and the blueprint for rescuing the American dream. I'm looking forward to that. That's coming up at the bottom of the second hour. Then Gregg Phillips. He's the creator of Ground Fusion AI, artificial intelligence, and he deals with political technology. And we're going to talk about Kamala's digital strategy. They have something in this event called the blue carpet. And apparently they've got more members of the media than anybody ever had ever. And the way they did that was allowing social media influencers to be a part of it at this blue carpet that they're doing. And this has been, in effect, her campaign, right? I saw something the other day with, I forget, was Backstreet Boys or NSYNC? I always confuse them, forgive me. But Kamala Harris was with one of them, and she says, "What are we going to say to Trump?" And he says, "Bye, bye, bye." And, you know, it was just very funny to me. But again, she's trying to say, look, I've got popular culture in my pocket. I've got the youth vote in my pocket. I've got the Marxist leftist vote in my pocket, trying desperately for the independents to be in my pocket. And she's trying. And I've made this point several times, and I'll repeat it again. Most elections, I think, are relatively close. That's just how I think our political map works out. I think when you had a lackluster candidate like Joe Biden and a horrible record to go with it, it was a little bit more stark in contrast, where you could say, oh, yeah, this isn't going to work out well. Kamala Harris, has brought some enthusiasm where they feel like, oh, she's younger, she's more spry, she can bring the fight a little better, and that's the goal. I believe the goal has always been to mitigate the losses so that they don't lose as badly as they were going to lose. But I don't think that they're going to win. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm saying Trump's got this in the bag. No, not at all. This is going to be a hard-fought fight just like any other, because that's what we have, right? We have very tight, contested elections. I do still think Trump wins, and by a very healthy margin, because ultimately I don't think people are going to forget, because of this summertime love affair with Kamala Harris. They're not going to forget the last 3.5 years of inflation, of dealing with taking modified vacations or no vacation at all because you can't afford it because you're not making as much money, or you're making as much money as you used to, but everything costs so much more. And again, even the people that don't blame this directly on the government, the people that say, hey, look, everything in the world just went up in price after COVID. Everything went up. All right, that's fine. Just because you're not attuned to the way inflation works and public policy, that's fine. I'm not holding that against anybody. But those people are going to have to make a determination. In my opinion, they are the ones. And again, this is not rocket science. Most people will tell you it's always about the independent voter, always about the independent voter. And I think this is really going to come down to the independent voter. And it's, in my opinion, it's going to be on the economy. No matter how much they say the economy doesn't matter, no matter how much they try to manipulate the price of gas a month, 2 months before Election Day, no matter how much they try to put pressure on large retailers like Target or anybody else to say, hey, look, you got to lower food prices, and talk about price gouging, also known as price gauging, and talk about socialist price controls and all these things that she's talking about. Ultimately, that will affect some people, again, and that crucial part of the electorate called the independents. But it's not going to affect them all. And that is where we're fighting. So if you're out there and you're telling people and you see somebody with a Biden-Harris sticker, if you want for kicks and giggles and you want to go at it with them, go right ahead. But realize these people typically have their minds made up. It's the people with no political bumper stickers. It's the people who don't like getting involved in politics. It's the people that say, I don't talk about religion. I don't talk about politics. It's all those people that, if you listen to this program, maybe you don't really talk to that much, right? Because they don't engage, but they're the ones, in my opinion, that are going to decide who wins and loses. They're the ones that are up for grabs. The undecideds, especially the undeclareds as well, those that have no political affiliation. And this is ultimately going to come down to that. Now, yes, you want to make gains with young people. You want to make gains with everybody else. And you have to campaign across the board. But I'm telling you, as people that are out there, don't waste your time getting into fights with people that have their hair dyed blue, have been waving a rainbow flag and a BLM flag and the Hamas flag. Come on. Take it easy. You're wasting your time, right? Go after some good fruit, the low-hanging fruit. Anyway, I want to talk about this ceasefire that Blinken announced earlier today. And as I see it, Hamas has already said, no, thank you. So there goes that one. After Netanyahu, with a lot of pressure and protests and all sorts of things happening in Israel, agreed to this. The Hamas terrorists said, no, thank you. So we're going to get to that and so much more. We're keeping our eye on what's going on at the DNC. Joe Biden's scheduled to talk later. We probably will not be carrying that live, but I'll grab a clip or two and we'll play it for you later. And we're about to have a little bit of a conversation with our buddy Josh Hammer. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
In a very constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu today, he confirmed to me that Israel accepts the bridging proposal, that he supports it. It's now incumbent on Hamas to do the same. And then the parties, with the help of the mediators, the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, have to come together and complete the process of reaching clear understandings about how they'll implement the commitments that they've made under this agreement. But the next important step is for Hamas to say yes, and then in the coming days for all of the expert negotiators to get together to work on clear understandings on implementing the agreement.
That is Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, announcing that Israel, after some pressure from all over the place, has agreed to the ceasefire. And what do you think Hamas said in response? I'll leave that as a cliffhanger, and I'll bring in our guest. Josh Hammer is our guest. He's been on before. He's senior counsel at the Article 3 Project, great organization. And he's also senior editor-at-large at Newsweek. And he also has a show called America on Trial that he hosts on the First TV, as well as a podcast called the Josh Hammer Podcast. So I'm surprised he even had time to come on with us with all those jobs. Josh Hammer, welcome back, brother.
Rich, I always have time for you, my friend. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. So we're talking about this proposal that they've gotten Netanyahu to agree to. And again, he was put under a lot of pressure because he wants to get the job done. And not long after that, do we get a response from Hamas? Fill us in.
Well, Hamas has immediately rejected the ceasefire. So,
what a surprise!
I mean, this has been essentially the song and dance for months and months and months now. Is that Israel is perpetually willing to take these intermediate ceasefires, these pauses in fighting. Now, what Israel will not do is agree to simply just withdraw from Gaza until all the hostages are out and until Hamas is militarily and politically decimated. But they have repeatedly agreed to these extended pauses in fighting. The problem is that Hamas has no pressure on it whatsoever because the Western world, very much including the Biden administration, of which Antony Blinken is, of course, a leading part, the Western world is putting no pressure whatsoever on Hamas. Now, Rich, if we go back a few months ago, in the lead up to the invasion of Rafah, Hamas's southernmost stronghold in the Gaza Strip, Israel essentially sat on the city limits outside the city gates of Rafah for a month and a half, 2 months. It took seemingly forever, while the Biden administration and all the powers that be essentially told Netanyahu and the Israelis, oh, you better make sure that you have this contingency plan, or you have a plan for this or for that or for that. And it's funny because Hamas was obviously not willing to come to the table then, but then as soon as Israel started blowing past the city gates and started actually taking out militants in their last stronghold, they started to come begging to the table. And that's just common sense. That's just basic human logic 101, is that if you want to force the other party to come to the table, you can't just try to appease them every which way. You have to apply forceful pressure. It's very similar to the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign against the Iranian regime, against the Hamas jihadist organization's patrons in Tehran. That policy that was orchestrated by Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, perhaps above all, which had the Iranian regime basically on the brink of extinction by the time that Donald Trump was out of office and Joe Biden was back in office. So, so much of foreign policy, from my perspective, Rich, is dramatically overanalyzed. It's really quite simple. You stand by your friends, you put pressure on your enemies, and if you want your enemy to come to the table, then you have to apply immense pressure on them. Now, I do suppose that this analysis is brought into question if you don't actually view Israel as your friend and don't actually view Hamas as your enemies. And, watching the DNC in Chicago, I do have to wonder whether or not the Democrats do, in fact, agree with that.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Folks, again, we're on with Josh Hammer. You've seen his articles on Newsweek, and you've seen him, you've heard him on our program before. Now, Josh Hammer, what I find interesting is this stuff, from my position, is so challenging to have discussions about because of exactly how you opened. You said this has been the song and dance since day one. How does this become a perpetual war? Does the IDF eradicate Hamas? Are they able to get there, or do they continue to use the hostages as leverage in the tunnels? And is there an off-ramp to this or no?
I think the off-ramp is immense Western pressure brought to bear to force Hamas to give up the hostages, essentially in exchange for some sort of agreement for their leaders to be exiled and stay alive. Now, admittedly, that's somewhat of a tall order there, but Israel has been dealing with the Hamas presence in Gaza for roughly 16 to 17 years now. So they unilaterally withdrew from Gaza in 2005. There was a period of political instability for about 2 years. And in 2007, Hamas won a very bloody civil war over their Palestinian Arab rivals in Fatah. It was a very undercovered war at the time. It lasted about a week or two. Hamas threw their Palestinian Arab brothers off of rooftops. It was extremely gruesome and bloody. But long story short, Israel's not dealing with that anymore. I mean, we have seen what a so-called two-state solution looks like in practice for the past 16 years. And what it looks like, frankly, is October 7, 2023. That is your two-state solution in practice. And Hamas is the worst of the bunch. They are far worse, than any of the other vying Palestinian Arab factions right now. So there's just no way. There is just no way at this point that Israel is going to go back to an October 6, 2023 status quo ante. So this thing is tragically probably going to drag on a little while longer. Now, the best way to get Hamas to come to the table, besides applying pressure to Hamas itself, would be to apply pressure to Hamas's patrons, namely to the Iranian regime on the one hand, but also the Emirates of Qatar. Qatar funds Hamas more than any other country in the world. Tragically, from my perspective, Qatar is actually a formally listed major non-NATO U.S. ally. The U.S. likes to have it both ways with Qatar. We have a major air base there, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. And tragically, America has put shockingly little pressure on Qatar to actually get Hamas to the table, which is a huge mistake from my vantage point. So there are various diplomatic tools that the U.S. can do, but they're really just not doing it.
More failures from the Blinken-Biden-Harris administration. Josh Hammer's our guest. We're going to continue with our coverage of the DNC, his reaction to that, and more coming up straight ahead. Don't move a muscle. We're coming right back with Josh Hammer. I'm Rich Valdez.
America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial, and when he woke up, he made his own kind of history. The first person to run for president with 34 felony convictions. As Vice President, Kamala
That, of course, is Hillary Clinton, or as El Trompito would call her, Crooked Hillary. And she was there following the speech of AOC, all out crazy, my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And at the end of that there, I don't know if you heard it or you could make it out, that chanting at the end wasn't just applause. They were shouting, lock him up, lock him up. I got to tell you, this is not as entertaining as I thought it was going to be, although the AOC stuff was really, really funny. But I want to bring back in our guest, Josh Hammer. You know him from Newsweek, where he's senior editor at large. He's also senior counsel at the Article 3 Project and the host of America on Trial and the Josh Hammer Show. Make sure you check that out wherever you get your podcast. Josh Hammer, what's your take on what's going on so far at the Democrat National Convention in Chicago?
Well, first of all, Rich, we've really come full circle, haven't we? I mean, Hillary Clinton laughing and nodding along to chants of lock him up.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
It feels like it was just yesterday, doesn't it? I mean, back in 2016, where lock her up thing. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how fast our politics really just flips on its head. I mean, I think thus far what we've seen both inside and outside the United Center, where the arena is being held, I mean, I think you're seeing something of a freak show, if I can just be as politically incorrect as possible. I mean, this convention literally opened off with the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan, talking about what her tribal name was, and the Democratic National Platform starts with a land acknowledgement. They are on stolen indigenous land. I mean, it's something it's like literally out of like a far left pseudo academic nightmare. And then you want to throw some fuel into the fire. Look at what's happening outside the convention on the streets. You have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people flying the flags of U.S.-recognized foreign terrorist organizations, avowed enemies of Western civilization. You have the whole hypocritical gays for Gaza thing, the equivalent of chickens for Chick-fil-A. I mean, it's just crazy. The whole thing is just utterly crazy. And then you have the Planned Parenthood van that's outside the arena. This van is offering free vasectomies and free abortions to anyone who wants them. I mean, Rich,
that is nuts.
They're giving out abortions like it's an ice cream sundae. I mean, come for a hot dog, stay for a dessert of an abortion. I mean, like, it's satanic. I mean, all of this, the combined effect of all of this is positively satanic, I think. And I can only hope that the American people see it for what it is.
Yeah, I saw that article earlier today about free vasectomies and abortions for those attending the DNC, and I thought, this has to be like satire. But it wasn't. I looked and I saw it everywhere in all these major publications, and I thought, why and who are they appealing to? And listen, I understand that abortion rights, I am pro-life and I support the pro-life movement, but I also realize that I've been on the losing end of that, despite the huge victory in the Supreme Court. But culturally, most people I meet think I'm crazy, right? Most people that I meet, I live in Jersey and I was born in New York, so I think maybe it's my surroundings. But most people that I meet are like, even Republicans. I meet Republicans that tell me, look, I'm not about to tell a woman what to do with her body. They take a libertarian approach. My body, my choice. Do what you want. So I feel like this is such a tough issue, and I understand that they have some appeal there because it appeals to people. But why offer free abortions at the DNC and then tie in free vasectomies for anything other than but making sure you're solidifying your stance as the anti-children party? And I don't want to filibuster here because I want to hear from you, but article, I don't know, let's see, maybe a month ago, July 25th, here's the headline. Kids, a growing number of Americans say no thanks. Right, so now this is an article that's citing the fact that there's more and more Americans now. 47% of those younger than 50 without children say they were unlikely to ever even have children. That's an increase of 10% from 2018. It's a new thing. That's a Pew Research, by the way. So fascinating to me. It really is fascinating to me that this is in vogue. It's a trend within the Democrat Party, within the progressive movement, with anybody who's left of center, that let's not have kids and become social justice warriors. Josh.
So there's a couple of trends going on here that I think are overlapping. So on the one hand, you've had the transmogrification of the Clinton-era rhetoric of safe, legal, and rare when it comes to abortion. You had the decades-long lurch from that towards Shout Your Abortion. That was the title of a book by Catherine Pollitz, who is a well-known feminist pro-abortion activist. I mean, I graduated law school in 2016. I literally went to the pro-abortion student group's book review event of that very book I just mentioned to just try to engage my classmates, understand where they were coming from. And they actually, from that perspective, I mean, it's part of a destigmatization process, but they are either intellectually incapable or just disingenuously failing to appreciate that an abortion is meaningfully different than clipping your toenail. It's tragic, obviously, for the unborn child whose life is lost, but it really is just intellectually dishonest in the extreme, but it's what they have to do to try to curry and build up public support for the radical pro-abortion agenda. So that's the trend on the one hand, away from the Clintonian stigmatization towards the open embrace of the abortion exercise itself. And then on the other hand, you have simultaneously this trend where you have elites, especially greenies, environmental activists, people like that, the global warming crowd, all that. I mean, they are increasingly clamoring to tell you to not have children, because why would you selfish person, why would you ever bring people into this world who will gobble up oxygen and spit out carbon dioxide? I mean, it really is the complete rejection, obviously, of the be fruitful and multiply injunction from the Bible, and it's the embrace of the pagan goddess Gaia, if you want to go, full kind of Greco-Roman mythology. But that really is what they're doing there. It actually is an anti-children agenda. It's an anti-family agenda, which, by the way, on the flip side, creates a beautiful opportunity for Republicans, if they're interested in seizing it, to be the party of the American family, which is what I and others and many other social conservatives have been saying that they should strive to be exactly that for some years now.
Yeah, really good point. Josh Hammer, stick with us. I want to come back to some of the writing you've done. I'm looking at one of your pieces, and it's something I've been talking about on the show here as well, about making this campaign not about Kamala's race, not about anything else other than the issues, making her own the inflation, making her own the border, and making her own everything else, like these foreign policy disasters that we experience every day. Folks, we're coming right back with Josh Hammer. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
In Kamala Harris, I see a leader who understands. I see a leader with a real commitment to a better future for working families. And Chicago, we have to help her win. Because we know that Donald Trump would sell this country for $1 if it meant lining his own pockets and greasing the palms of his Wall Street friends. And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots of greed, trampling on our way of life.
She's channeling her inner Che Guevara. That's AOC, all out crazy. My least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And it's always a real joy to hear her spewing her craziness. I want to bring back Josh Hammer. Josh Hammer, that's what's going on at the DNC right about now. And the focus of their campaign is how bad Donald Trump is. What say you?
Well, look, I think that the Trump campaign was definitely caught off guard a little bit by the bloodless coup of Joe Biden. Democrats got the recess that they clearly wanted there. I think that the honeymoon is dying, if it's not dead already. I think that they're already running out of steam. The polls have started to shift back a little bit, from what I can tell. So Polymarket, which is one such website, says that each candidate now has a 49% chance of winning the Electoral College, which I guess by definition leaves 2% to a 269 to 269 tie. And then if you look at some of the other polls, The Economist now has Donald Trump projected to win narrowly over Harris. So, I could go on, but it seems like the Harris campaign has already reached its highest point, which is essentially what I predicted. And early voting does not start in Pennsylvania, maybe the nation's single most crucial battleground state, until September 16th, if I have the date right, which, by the way, is absurd that early voting actually starts that early. But hold that aside for present purposes. The point is that no one is voting for a few weeks now. So I continue to think that the Trump campaign is actually in perfectly fine shape. A lot of people on the right, a lot of commentators have been starting to kind of, wet their pants, proverbially speaking, so to speak. I've really not been one of them. I continue to think that the fundamentals actually favor Donald Trump in this race.
I'm with you. I have not lost shifted my focus on this either, because I think this is not really about Trump and his personality. If it was, he may or may not win. I really think people are going to be voting on the issues, the fact that the last 3.5 years were brutal for them, and that the people that hate Trump miss him because things were better under Trump than they were with Biden. And I think it's that simple. And she's an extension of Biden. If we can make that case, we're home free. Now, I woke up today to an article, Newsweek, your stomping grounds. Kamala Harris suffers triple polling blow before DNC starts, where there was several polls. Let me see if I can get them right here. Polls of likely voters in Pennsylvania conducted by Signal and Emerson College gave both Trump a 1-point lead in the battleground state, which comes with 19 electoral college points, blah, blah, blah. And this is going into the DNC with all the hype that goes with that, the pomp, the circumstance, et cetera. So I think if she can't go into this with her honeymoon period lead, to me, it sounds like she might have an uphill battle.
I totally agree. And, this is all assuming that they're going to get any kind of bump at all from this convention, which I'm just not entirely sure that they will. I mean, look, the Democrats' worst case scenario is an open revolt or an open shouting down of speakers from the so-called uncommitted delegates, which namely refer to these pro-Hamas crazies, people from Dearborn, Michigan, Minneapolis, Minnesota, places like that. At least as of right now, at the time that you and I are speaking, I do not think that Democrats have been able to decisively rule out that from happening. So, I mean, that remains a very viable fear right now. I mean, we will see what Kamala Harris's actual speech looks like. She's not necessarily the world's greatest public speaker. I think that would be a remarkable understatement, actually, there. So yeah. I am just not convinced that they're going to get any kind of meaningful bounce. To kind of borrow from what the financial analysts on CNBC and so forth say, I think that's really already priced in. That's really already baked in at this point. They really got their bounce after the coup, after Biden got out. That was the reset they all waited for. I don't think there's going to be any kind of additional bounce from here. The best they can possibly ask is to staunch some of the bleeding of what already has been the beginning of the pendulum flipping back. But to get back to what you were saying, if Trump and Vance and the Republicans in general can continue this ruthless laser focus on the issues that matter, really economy, inflation, immigration, crime, those are really the four big issues. You keep talking about those four issues day in and day out, and you really don't veer off of that message, I think the Republicans will be in good shape if they can follow that fairly straightforward advice.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. Folks, Josh Hammer is our guest. Josh Hammer, let everybody know how they can listen to your infinite wisdom on the Josh Hammer Show.
Well, I appreciate it as always, Rich. So I do host the Josh Hammer Show and America on Trial with Josh Hammer, both of those available wherever you get your podcast. Josh Hammer Show is also on a few radio stations as well. And then I write a weekly syndicated column as well that goes up in Newsweek and a bunch of other conservative media outlets every week on Friday mornings as well.
Outstanding. Josh, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time. We'll talk again real soon.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
You got it, brother. God bless. All right, folks, we're going to hit the phones and a couple of other things we got to get to before we move on with our conversation. Plus, we're going to talk about the digital strategy. What does this look like for Kamala Harris? Will this TikTok campaign of hers continue to pan out? Will this AI? I don't know if you guys have seen it. For those of you that are watching the social media channels, I saw the funniest AI of Donald Trump smooching with Kamala Harris. It was the funniest thing. They were taking like a sunset walk on the beach, holding hands. Then she's pregnant. Then there's a baby, El Trompito. It's the funniest thing. It's all over. It's been going viral. If you've seen it, great. If not, look for it. It's you're going to see it in the next day or two, I'm sure, if you haven't seen it already. Anyway, we're going to get to your calls more and everything else straight ahead. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with our discussion on the DNC. And again, AOC was not quite done, right? She had a little bit more to say at the convention tonight. One of the things that she was talking about was how Kamala Harris fights for the middle class. She talked about how Kamala Harris is a leader that, would fight for America. And she talked about nothing being wrong with being a bartender for a living. And again, there is nothing wrong with that. But her final one, she says, so many of us are struggling to make ends meet. Kamala Harris is the answer. Listen to this.
If you are a senior who had to go back to work because your retirement didn't stretch far enough, Kamala is for you. If you're an immigrant family just starting your American story, Kamala is for you.
Well, on that last point, no question, if you're an immigrant, Kamala is for you. Absolutely. But on the others, if you are a senior citizen and you're struggling to remain in retirement, if I were the senior citizen, I would say, isn't Kamala Harris part of the Biden-Harris administration that put us in this mess? Why is she the answer? I think that's worth asking, and I would love to hear AOC's answer on that. Let's hit the phones with that one, 833-482-5337. And let's go to our favorite liberal, David in San Francisco, California. David, what makes us believe that Kamala Harris is going to improve the economy when the economy went south on her watch?
Well, first thing, I'm not a liberal. I'm a 1776 conservative.
Okay.
And for you to pretend that America is not the land of the free and the home of the brave, and that people are trying to get here to escape tyranny, and that you are trying to make sure that they can't get here.
Yes, I would love that. If I had more time, if I didn't have to be on the air at night, I would be part of the Minutemen Project on horseback at the border, with the leather whips and stuff, making sure these guys don't get in. Because we need to protect our borders. If a homeless man came to my door and asked me for $5 and I had it, I'd give it to him. If he said, can I sleep on your couch? I'd say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. That's just how it works. But thank you, our 1776 liberal, for not answering the question. I guess you were not prepared or equipped or, courageous enough to tell us why Kamala Harris can't fix the problem she created. I'm Rich Valdez.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program, and we're live. We're national. We're covering the DNC that's happening right now in Chicago. I'm going to bring you some stuff from that momentarily. Our phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Lots to discuss tonight. We're going to talk about the Christian vote. How are Christians expected to vote? What are they going to be voting on? And this is always a fun topic for me because I realize that we're not a theocracy, right? So we want to vote with our values in mind, but with the founding at the foundation of our vote, and hopefully of how we make our choices for our government, our constitutional republic. We're also going to talk about the DNC, the digital strategy that Kamala Harris is employing, and something that they call the blue carpet, which is being featured at the Democrat National Convention, which is pretty interesting, right? The major social media platforms and their respective influencers will be out there in almost Hollywood premiere style, right? Instead of a red carpet, they've got a blue carpet, having the high-profile attendees walk on this blue carpet with comedians and actors and all sorts of others that are going to be on the blue carpet for different social media outlets. And there's about 200 digital content creators that are going to be covering the DNC. Listen to some of the celebrities they have lined up. John Legend, the singer. I don't know who Octavia Spencer is, so forgive me on that one. But Julia Louis-Dreyfus from Seinfeld. She's also on there. Let me see who else they've got. Stephen Colbert is going to be doing a live taping of his show in Chicago for the convention. Let me see what other star power they have here. They're bringing in the big guns. Joel Baboso Biden scheduled to speak tonight. And you've got other speakers, including Hillary Clinton, which we brought you a clip of her. Kamala Harris, I'm going to bring you a clip of her in a moment. She did a surprise impromptu speech tonight. You got Barack Obama coming up later in the week, which I think is probably their biggest speaker. But I want you to hear a little bit of Kamala Harris herself tonight in her surprise speech.
Looking out at everyone tonight, I see the beauty of our great nation. People from every corner of our country and every walk of life are here, united by our shared vision for the future of our country. And this November, we will come together and declare with one voice, as one people, we are moving forward. With optimism, hope, and faith, so guided by our love of country, knowing we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Let us fight for the ideals we hold dear, and let us always remember, when we fight, we win. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. Good night, everyone.
When we fight, we win, she says. Look, I got to say, this is probably one of her more friendly remarks. It was nice. They talked about patriotism. The theme for tonight is for the people, which is nice because, you know, we are a republic of the people, for the people, by the people. But they should have added those, in my opinion, right? They should have made it we the people. And I think that's something Democrats tend to always forget about. But they don't care. They don't care about the founding of the government. They don't care about why we exist as a country. They don't care about anything other than winning, in my humble opinion. And that doesn't mean that every last Republican is a saint either. That's not the case that I'm making at all. But I think by I'm not going to say by definition, but by anecdotal evidence that I've observed, which is, you know, impossible to prove, most conservative Republicans really do love their country. Many, a good large number of them, have served this country in uniform, and an even higher number, or at least the same, again, based on my experience dealing with people through the years, also have family members that have served, some that have given their life in service to the country, sometimes more than 3 generations. So I think this is, and that doesn't mean that there are not Democrats that serve, right? Look at Tim Walz with more than 2 decades of service. The point I'm making is that I think when people say they love the country, I think it means different things to different people. And I'll make the example of Cuba. When the Castro regime was having a revolution to take over Cuba, they were talking about their love of Cuba and how they wanted Cuba to be better, and they didn't want it to be under the oppression of the current regime, as well as the oppression of the evil United States. And the United States, all these years, right? We had, in my lifetime, we had Reagan, we had Bush, we had Clinton, we had Bush again, we had Obama, we had Trump, and now we have Joe El Baboso Biden. In all of those, we've seen changes on Cuba policy, but no major issue, in my opinion. I don't think there was any crushing blow to the Cubans. I don't see it. If I'm wrong, argue with me. But in Cuba, the people on the street would sing a different song. Why? Because that's what they're told. Why? Because up until 2010 or so, many of them didn't have internet. And they only knew what they were told on the state-run media. So if Castro's news service told them, the reason you don't have food is because the United States has an embargo on us, that's not true. Cuba has lots of resources that they could have. They don't have food because they pillaged their own country. That's why. It's not like everybody imports every last food item from the United States. We know that's not true. Right? So the reason that Cuba is not thriving today is not because of the United States. It's because of the Cuban regime that is still in place through Diaz-Canel, who, is a successor of the Castros. And I think we all agree with that, right? That's a matter of fact. It's a matter of actual happening. But that is not an issue that is up for debate in Cuba, unless you have the internet, which some of them do now, and now they're able to debate it. And it's this internet that I want to talk about, right? Because here in the United States, we go through the same thing. We don't have state-run media, but we have Democrats within the media that, outside of Fox News and Newsmax, you're going to hear exactly what you're told, right? Who ran the communications for the Clinton campaign, right? George Stephanopoulos. Who runs ABC This Week? George Stephanopoulos. So you have all of these political hacks that are now within the media. And even if you made the same argument and said, but that's the same way Fox News is, that's the same way Newsmax is, even if you made that argument, and let's say I were to give you that and agree, I would still say that's just 2 networks versus, I don't know, a bunch of others. And it provides balance, if anything else. So I want to talk about strategy, digital strategy, all of these influencers that are on the blue carpet, and so much more with our guest. Gregg Phillips is the founder of Ground Fusion AI. He's also one of the executive producers of the film 2000 Mules. Gregg Phillips, welcome back.
Rich, thanks so much for having me back. Enjoyed it last time and look forward to this one.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And so did I. And I was really looking forward to talking with you about this because it was a very unique conversation that we had where you were really well-versed on AI and the geo-targeting that you guys used in the film and all that stuff that is really, Greek to me. But it seems to be how they're running the entire campaign. And I think when you want to convey a message, going viral on social media is fantastic. I don't know if that equates into votes per se, but it definitely will swing a poll here and there. So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts with regards to this, right? There's been this honeymoon period we keep hearing about, but today I wake up to this article in Newsweek, headline, Kamala Harris suffers triple polling blow before DNC starts. And she's down in 3 different polls in Pennsylvania, where she spent the weekend there. And Trump is leading the way in Pennsylvania. And I'm looking at this and thinking this is likely a trend that's going to continue where these artificially inflated polls that were, incorrectly sampled and whatnot, are going to start to level out, and people are still going to vote their values. People are still going to vote their pocketbook, and their pocketbooks haven't changed, have they, Gregg Phillips?
No, they really haven't. And I think it's really sort of a back to the future thing for me. I've been in this politics for doing this stuff for 44 years. And
that's it.
when I first got into it, we were still laboring over this idea that it was old school back then. And so you had three basic things you had to worry about as a political consultant or an operative in the space. You had to worry about your base, of course, right? And those are all the people that are going to pretty much vote for you, even if you're, have dementia or whatever it is that Biden's got. And then you've got another group in the middle that a lot of the media calls independents. And while they may be independents, the bigger issue with these folks is they're undecided. They're undecided whether or not they're going to go for Trump or whether they're going to go off to Harris. But more than that, they're trying to decide whether they're going to vote at all. So these are very high information people and people that are movable generally. And then you have what I think the Democrats have always beat us on, and I learned about this, like I said, back in 1980, and all of this emerged from the Goldwater era. And the Goldwater team were absolute masters. A guy named Shattuck, John Shattuck, his son ended up becoming a congressman, but Shattuck was really sort of steeped in how you actually do this. This was, of course, before we had PCs, before we had phones, before we had anything, but they knew how to do it. And the way they did it was to tap the indifference. And they used to say it this way: the indifference make the difference. And what they mean by that is these are people that would rather be out fishing or hunting or going shopping or hanging out in a bar with their friends or drinking a beer or whatever it is that people do these days. They'd rather do anything than worry about one more lying politician. And what the Goldwater team figured out was that if they held their base, if they just took their share of those people in the middle there, those undecided, but they went after the indifference and got those people out and got those people energized. The left has beat us since the Goldwater days on those fronts. They are just better at it than we are. What I'm so excited about this year is what we've been able to accomplish so far with we have a big database called the Fusion Center, or we keep it in what we call the Fusion Center. The company Ground Fusion, what we did was we took all of that data. It's underpinned by some incredible AI-driven analytics that allow us to go in and grab micro targets. Find those older folks that are on fixed income, that just on and on and on, and we can add as many elements as we want to the cohort, and then target that message from us to that cohort about things they care about, and then do it and replicate it over and over and over again at scale across 211 million registered voters in America. And because we can now do that, and we're watching it happen, and we're moving numbers every single day, we're obviously keeping up with numbers. I know you noted one of our good friends, the folks at Signal, did that one of those polls that you mentioned just before I came on, and we believe that the number's actually wider than that already, and that there's still some little bit of hangover from the first numbers. Everybody's trying to get their packages back straight, but people like the guys at Signal and really across the board, they're starting to see these numbers, and they're starting to see these numbers move back to where we all believe that they were. Because we're doing this at that micro level, we're touching people that aren't on anybody's radar, right? They're never going to be polled. You don't know who they are. You don't know where they live. You don't know what they do. We are touching those people and learning more about them and learning what they want.
I think that's the key, and something that I talked about last week with guys that are in the same field as you in some way, Robert Cahaley and John McLaughlin. They were saying if you oversample Democrats versus Republicans, you're going to get an oversampled poll with skewed results, and it seems like we seem to have that over and over. So I want to talk about that and get your reaction to a few more things when we come back. Folks, we're coming right back with Gregg Phillips.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America? This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation. We're discussing the polls, the Democrat National Committee, and more with our guest, Gregg Phillips from Fusion AI. And Gregg Phillips, in the couple of minutes we have remaining, I want to get your thoughts briefly on whether or not the effort that the Kamala Harris campaign is making to make this about Trump and about other things is going to work versus the issues. And I guess I'm saying, do you think that they can magically fix the economy and erase the last 3.5 years of inflation and the border crisis in 3.5, months, as opposed to what happened in the last 3.5 years?
Yeah, well, they're going to spend the next, 78 days or something for the election. They're going to spend the entire time lying and gaslighting America. Their biggest problem is that they have been in charge for 4 years. She's been in charge for 4 years. All of the nonsense that's going on, all of the hate, all of the things that are happening at the border, every single thing that Biden did is going to be hung on her neck. We're not super worried, honestly, about the White House. We think Trump's going to ultimately come through. We think that the Senate is going to, the Republicans will pick up at least 5 in the Senate. But what we are most worried about, and I hope that your listeners will consider my suggestion at the end, we're worried about the House. The House is close. Find a congressperson or find someone who's running for Congress and go support them, work in their race. Sometimes it's not enough just to vote. This is one of those times. We've got to pray, we've got to work, and we've got to vote. And we've got to do it at scale.
Outstanding. Amen to that. Gregg Phillips, let everybody know how they can find you and learn more about the work you're doing at Fusion AI.
Spend most of my time trying to hide from everybody, but you can go take a look at what we're doing at groundfusion.ai. I'm on Truth Social at Gregg, two G's at the end, Phillips. So come on, tell me or you heard me on Rich's show, and I'll follow you back and love to have you join our community.
Outstanding. Gregg Phillips, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thanks for the insight and all the technical nuance that you always provide for us. We really appreciate it, sir. Godspeed.
Happy to do it. Love to talk to you again. Thanks, Rich.
You bet. My pleasure. And, folks, this is the focus, right? The focus is on Kamala Harris. Quickly, I want to go to, with the minute that we have remaining, let's go to Billy in Topeka, Kansas, KMAJ. Go right ahead, Billy, quickly.
Cameron, first-time caller.
All right, welcome.
You and your show and all the truths, and I appreciate that. And your guest you had on. The reason for my call, prior to that, you talked about Cuba.
Billy, I'm sorry, you're chopping up a little bit, and I couldn't hear you, and the music is playing, so maybe we'll put you back on hold, and I'll try and get you back on a little bit after the break. Billy in Topeka, Kansas. Thank you. KMAJ. Folks, we're coming right back. We've got more to come straight ahead. Keep it locked right here. How should Christians be voting? We're going to talk about that up next with our guest. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, as those of you who know us, she still leaves me both breathless and speechless. Everybody knows her. I love her more than she loves me. She walks down the stairs, and I still get that going, boom, boom, boom. You all will know me. No, not kidding. Let's give a special round of applause to our First Lady, Jill Biden. My dad.
All All right, that is President Joe Biden's addressing the Democrat National Convention, about to give his ringing endorsement for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, Tiananmen Tim Walz. And as we get more on that, we'll bring it to you. He just wrapped up thanking God for his daughter, Ashley Biden, who gave some nice platitudes about him a little while ago. And, you know, he's going to go on to explain why people should vote for Kamala Harris. But a question that I have is, why should people vote for Kamala Harris? And moreover, many of us in America are of the Christian faith. And it's always a topic of, I don't want to say contention, but debate, right? People always wonder, you know, do I vote my faith? Do I vote this? Do I vote that? And I think in general, if you have a worldview that is informed by the Bible, by the scriptures, by your faith, if it's a Christian worldview, that's going to inform a lot of how you look at things and how you think and the positions that you take. But ultimately, I'm infamous maybe for saying I'm not voting for a pastor or a priest or a preacher. I'm voting for a president. And I often say that when people try to say that, you know, Trump is this and he's somehow immoral or this or that and the other. And that's the reality, right? We're not a theocracy, but it doesn't mean that we abandon our values as Christians in the process. So whether you're a Christian or not, the fundamentals, I think, of morality remain in play. And there's a lot to consider. So I want to bring in Craig Huey. He's a businessman and an author of The Christian Voter, How to Vote For, Not Against Your Values to Transform Culture and Politics. Craig Huey, welcome.
Rich, it's great to be with you.
Thank you, sir. And, we're listening, we're tapping in occasionally to what's going on at the Democrat National Convention. It's happening live in Chicago right now. We're covering that. And I'm not sure if you've been watching it this evening, but
yes.
When we look at this stuff, Craig Huey, I think that oftentimes, what we're seeing, at least in the last couple of weeks, and oftentimes in politics, you have people that run on different platforms, if you will. Mm. And then when it comes to time to election, they tend to go closer to a different perspective, whether it's running towards the middle, if you're on the left or if you're on the right, or in the case of Kamala Harris, it's running to be like Trump, right? Mimicking some of his proposals and that type of thing. So tonight, it doesn't surprise me at all that the theme is for the people, and they keep talking about a love of country and being patriotic. And honestly, that's the most I've heard from Democrats in the years that I've followed them. And typically they don't adorn their stage with lots of American flags. That's typical of Democrats, and that is in fact the theme for tonight. And with the theme for tonight being for the people, but really being reinforced by free abortions, free vasectomies for everybody that's attending, to me reinforces a degree of godlessness that permeates the culture within the Democrat Party. Do you think that's too extreme for me to say?
Absolutely not. When you're talking about evangelical Christians, and that's 80 million, that's one of the largest voting blocks in America. Indeed, usually it's about 25% of the entire vote are evangelical Christians. And when you're talking about Catholics who go to Mass, go to church multiple times within a month, you're talking about people who vote conservative. Indeed, the evangelical Christians, they vote 84% conservative. So, Rich, when they're seeing this and they hear what's going on right there in Chicago, they're horrified of the pro-abortion. Even after birth, they're horrified of the idea of partial birth abortion. When you're dealing with evangelical Christians, they're concerned about the government's attack, what they would call a war on Christianity coming out of Washington, D.C. They're very concerned, Rich, about Israel. From an evangelical's perspective, they look at the Bible, and the Bible is in Genesis, it says, I will bless those that bless thee. I will curse those that curse thee. These evangelicals believe in that verse. They believe in God's word. And so the idea of undermining Israel is so horrifying and such a game changer that it gets down to this. Bottom line is this, and you alluded to it. The conservative Catholics and the evangelicals, they're not looking at personality. They're not looking at how someone talks or, any type of thing like that. What they're looking at is policy. They're looking at the issues. And what they see is inflation, the most immoral tax there is. What they're seeing is an attack in the school system on basic values in the elementary schools and in high schools, and a resistance by the Democratic Party to have school choice. So what they're seeing in Chicago, they're not applauding. They're horrified.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm horrified, too, when I hear that they're giving out free abortions and free vasectomies. And listen, if you're a guy and you want to get a vasectomy, that's totally on you, especially if you've had children already. But the fact that this is the marketing tool, the gimmick, the way to reinforce the party, to me just really sends the wrong message that it's an anti-family party. It's a party that's kind of anti-children. And I don't know that any society that can embrace a position of being anti-children and succeeding into the future.
Oh, you're 100% right. But you have to understand what the Democratic mentality is. So what you have right now is basically going back to the days of Obama, of being able to segment market segments. So they will take a look at segments, and they know that the abortion issue has one of the most successful histories of helping them win an election than any other issue. And they know that they've got to talk to their Democrat base to get them motivated to not only donate, but not only vote, but also they're looking for volunteers to go door to door with the most aggressive campaign in American history to try to win this election. So they have a purpose in doing this, and they divide into very, very specific segments, whether it's people who are passionate about student loans, they're passionate about some type of issue, and that's what they're hitting on.
Yeah, 100%. And this has been by and large an effective strategy for them. I was saying it earlier that I'm pro-life. I support the pro-life movement, but it's been a losing issue where most of my endeavors in it. Thankfully we had this big Supreme Court win last year, but outside of that, I'm in Jersey. New Jersey. Yeah. We've had late-term abortion as long as I've lived in New Jersey. That's been the norm here. And it's one of those things where even Republicans in New Jersey, you meet them and they're like, look, I'm not getting into that. If people want to do that with their bodies, it's on them. That's just how it is here. So when you say this has great appeal, it does. It appeals to a lot of people.
Yeah. And so to them, for them, really government is their God. Politics is a religion. Their whole worldview is to be able to grab more and more power. And so one of the paths they do is, how do I win this election? Well, for example, in the state of Arizona and in about 8 other states, they have on the ballot a state constitutional initiative in those states where they have people identifying who's pro-abortion. And among those, then, Rich, they find out, 20 to 30% of these pro-abortion people we're finding, they are not registered to vote. So I'm going to register them to vote. And then they make sure that they get out the vote. If it's ballot harvesting, they make sure that ballots are collected. If it's not, more traditional ways. But this is a game plan, and it's purposeful. And so what we're seeing, what you're seeing in the speakers and everything else, it's trying to really motivate that base to go out and do a powerful, positive job. The whole thing is marketing and advertising. The most brilliant campaign people that Obama had back in 2008 and 2012, they're guiding Kamala Harris's campaign right now, Anita Dunn and Jim Messina, and many of these people, they're all back in play, and they know what they're doing, and it is an incredible storytelling and marketing campaign that's going on.
Sounds more like propaganda to me. Craig Huey is our guest, and we're coming right back with him. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I've spoken to some of these pro-life groups. They tell me they're absolutely furious that Planned Parenthood would have a mobile clinic here during the DNC. But it's interesting. I've gotten on the Planned Parenthood website. I cannot find an address for this mobile clinic. And also, all of the appointments have already been booked up. Planned Parenthood Great Rivers, which is based in Missouri, where abortions are banned, writing on X, saying, "Here we come, Chicago. Our mobile clinic will be in the West Loop on August 19th and 20th. Now, this is a neighborhood just minutes from the Democratic National Convention where it's taking place, going on to read that they will provide free vasectomies and abortion medication. Now, emergency contraception will also be available for free without an appointment. Also, reportedly, Planned Parenthood has said that the mobile clinic demonstrates when states like Illinois work to support rather than restrict access to affordable care. The organization is also hoping to help those patients from surrounding states like, say, Iowa, to help get an abortion where it's been restricted.
So we've got free vasectomies, free abortion pills. This is what the Democrats are offering at their convention. Donald Trump offered a vision to make America great again, a vision where people don't pay tax on tips. And the Democrats, by serious contrast, are offering abortion medication and vasectomies, which I'm not against the vasectomy. I'm in the market for one. Maybe I can get one for free if I'm in Chicago. But the reality is this is a very stark difference. Another stark difference is how they treat the economy. Earlier today, I was going through my social media, and I saw a clip that was on YouTube of a woman, African-American woman, who'd sold her business. And she sold it to someone that got a loan. And from what she understood, these people were in the country illegally and were able to get a loan to buy her business while she was suffering so much that she had to sell her business. People who'd just barely gotten into the country were buying her business. Listen to this.
But I need my president to tell me why I worked so hard all these years, all these decades. Couldn't get a business loan, but I bust my ass to get the money to create my business. And we got immigrants coming here. And they're getting money. Money! We're doing nothing but just being here. It's not right, and I want answers.
This woman is very upset, and a lot of people are, about the handling of the economy. What is happening to the American dream? I want to go back to our guest, Craig Huey, who is the author of a new book called The Great Deception, 10 Shocking Dangers and the Blueprint for Rescuing the American Dream. Craig Huey, this is a tight segment, but I want you to give us, A, your reaction to what you heard, and B, how do we protect the American dream?
Rich, this is really the heart of this election in so many ways, because people are hurting. People are suffering. Business owners are suffering. And what we have coming out of the Democrat Party and out of Harris's mouth is basically fantasy economics. They're the ones who moved the national debt up to $35 trillion. They're the ones who have a budget deficit right now of $2 trillion. We're now at 123% of the GDP, which is outrageous. You can't sustain it. We are even paying $1 trillion of interest to bankers in foreign countries, and that's on just debt. And so we are in a world of hurt. So you have Harris on stage talking about, electricity's gone up 40-50%. Food's gone up. Everything's gone up. Well, she's right about that, but her solution is more government spending. Elon Musk, when he was doing that amazing discussion and conversation he had with Donald Trump, he gave the best definition there is. The man knows economics, understands reality, just cuts through the deception. And what he said basically is this: when the government spends more money than it takes in taxes, when it goes into debt, when you have this deficit spending, you're going to have an increase in prices. And that's what we've experienced in these 4 years.
100%.
It went from 1.5% to now 19% of total costs in just 4 years. This is the most dangerous person because she has basically a socialist worldview. She doesn't understand how to run a business. She's never signed a paycheck. She doesn't know how the economy runs. And what was her answer? Oh my gosh, Rich! When somebody asked her, "How are you going to pay for the spending you're suggesting?" She responded, "I look at the ROI. The ROI is the benefit people get."
Yeah, 100% right. And it was shocking to me. I posted that on my Instagram, at Rich Valdez with an S, if anybody wants to take a look at it. Absolutely remarkable. Fixing the inflation problem caused by government spending and fixing it with more government spending. Absolute insanity. Folks, stand by. We're coming right back with Craig Huey.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
He said it would help me politically and hurt him politically. My God. No, I'm serious. Think about it. Not a joke.
That is Joe El Baboso Biden talking about more gun legislation to stop people from their Second Amendment rights. Now, in the 45 seconds that we've got remaining, I want to bring back Craig Huey so he could tell us about where to get his wonderful books and learn about the wonderful work he does. Craig Huey, where do we go?
Oh. Well, thank you, Rich. Yes, The Great Deception, 10 Shocking Dangers and the Blueprint for Rescuing the American Dream. That's my latest book. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get it at my website where I have a newsletter and a lot of good content, and that's CraigHuey.com, CraigHuey.com.
Perfect. Craig Huey, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Keep up the great work. We'll have you back soon. Folks, Open Phone America is coming up straight ahead. The phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. Looking forward to speaking with all of you. I'm Rich Valdez.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And welcome. It's hour number 3 of our program, the Monday night edition. And I want to give you the phone number if you want to join us. We like to call this hour Open Phone America. That's where we open up the phone lines across America for you all to call in and talk about whatever you like. We've been talking about the Democrat National Convention, day 1. Joe Biden right now is speaking live, and we're going to get to that in a second. If you want to weigh in on that, we've also talked about how Christians should be voting, and of course, the digital strategy of the Harris campaign, and so much more on the political front tonight. Lots of interesting news to discuss. Again, the phone number 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And again, Democrats are live at the, I think it's the United Airlines Arena in Chicago for the Democrat National Convention. And what's interesting is that Kamala Harris actually came out and made some opening remarks for about a minute and a half, which is not customary, but I think she wanted to one-up Trump, and, you know, she's been doing the whole let's copy Trump playbook, so I think that's why she did that. She came out, kind of waved, and then took the mic and addressed the crowd for a moment. And, of course, then Hillary Clinton, AOC, Jill Biden, Ashley Biden, and, of course, now Joe El Baboso Biden says that Republicans will feel the electrical power of women. What kind of power? Electrical power. Listen to this.
The United States Supreme Court majority wrote the following, quote, women are not without electrical, not without electoral or political power. No kidding. MAGA Republicans found out the power of women in 2022. And Donald Trump is going to find out the power of women in 2024. Watch.
That's Donald Trump finding out about the electrical power of women, electrical power. Joe Biden giving us one of his famous Biden gaffes. You gotta love that. I'm so happy I got a chance to hear that during one of the breaks. That was just absolutely terrific. Electrical power. Joe Biden striking again. Electrical power. Women are not without electrical power. Yeah, you gotta love that. You really do. Anyway, that is Joe El Baboso Biden. Of course, Kamala Harris is now proposing raising the corporate tax rate to 28%. How's that for helping the economy, right? Let's raise taxes. When she was asked, how do we fix the issue with the economy? She says, milk costs more, gas costs more, this costs more, rent costs more, everything costs more. And it all happened on your watch, by the way. But she says, the way to fix it, I'm going to give you $25,000 through government spending so you can buy yourself a house. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. More government spending. That'll fix the problem. Unbelievable. Anyway, she says that as president, she will focus on creating an opportunity economy for the middle class that advances their economic security, stability, and dignity. And she's been fleshing out her policy positions with, the days leading up to this by really just saying stuff and not really putting anything on her website. But she's been attacking corporate price gouging, calling it price gauging. And, just like electoral power and electrical power, these guys are right on top of their game. This is the presidential ticket, folks. Anyway, this is her plan, is to raise the corporate income, the corporate tax. And this, I think, is not it's never a good idea, right? There's no tax increase is a good idea. I didn't even support the tariffs. I didn't support that either. I don't like any tax. I don't like any tax. Now, I know there's a lot of people that want to go back to pre-IRS time where only revenues were generated through tariffs. That's fine, but there's still taxes. It's a different form and way of doing taxes. You're taxing people for buying foreign goods as opposed to just taxing them on their income. I'm all about abolishing the income tax forever, making it illegal to ever tax income again. We should never tax the income, and we should abolish the IRS. But can we do that? I don't see it happening in the foreseeable future. I hope that we do. I hope we can. I hope we can abolish the Department of Education while we're at it. I mean, seeing a smaller government that takes less of our tax dollars would be a dream come true for me. But I also don't live in fantasy land, right? I leave the utopia stuff to the Democrats, and I try to stick around with the reality of life because I understand. That's just how it is. Anyway, I want to get to your calls and more. Of course, the phone number is 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Walter, Indianapolis, Indiana, streaming on richvaldez.com. Walter, go right ahead, sir.
Hey, Rich. First off, let me tell you, man, what a pleasure it is to get to talk to you. I have listened to you for the last 2 years inside of the United States Penitentiary at Terre Haute, Indiana.
Get out of here. Well, thank you, sir.
Man, you are fantastic. 97.9 is what I listen to, Fox Radio. Let me say this. The Democrats are lying to you. Biden made a promise to all of us nonviolent offenders. Hey, man, I'm going to turn you loose, man. Read my lips. Hear what I say. He did not. As soon as Donald Trump put out that First Step Act, I got released, but I had to fight. Oh, man, Rich, I had to fight so hard.
Wow.
It took me almost 3 years of fighting because he put it in December of 2018. I'm a nonviolent offender. Look me up, Rich. Your call screener has my name in real life, man. You'll see I ain't nobody. I lied to some federal agents. How many times you get pulled over by the cops? Hey, do you know how fast you were going? Yeah, I was doing 40 and a 55. Come on, man. Really?
They nailed you on that, huh?
This guy Biden, right. This guy Biden, he's keeping us in at $38,000 a year. $38,000 a year it costs to house me. You know what it costs to put me out on the street where I'm at now at this VOA here in Indianapolis? $8,000. $8,000. That's a $30,000 difference. And there's 188,000 people that are inside that prison, Rich.
Wow. Let me ask you a question,
people.
Walter. Did they get you on a Section 1001 violation?
No, sir.
Okay, good. Because I have some friends that were caught up in that, and that's the charge for lying to a federal agent. And it was absolutely just crazy that the way that they can position things to make it look like you're lying is just really, it's kind of crazy. I mean, they did it to General Flynn. They did it to my buddy James O'Keefe. They've done it to a lot of people. And it's usually used as a tactic of the federal government to get you to cooperate with something else, some bigger scheme that they have. Or they need one more number to say, oh, we got 10 people on this and, whatever. And it's very unfortunate. I agree with you. I don't support people breaking the law or anything like that. But when it comes to putting people in jail for a long, extended period of time for things that are somewhat insignificant, I think it's big government at its worst. And that's something that we need to put an end to if we can. Walter, I appreciate your kind words, brother. Really good to talk to you. I'm glad that you're home. I'm glad that Trump, kept his word with the First Step Act and, got you somewhat loose there. And you're right. You raise a good point. The amount of money it costs to keep you in prison versus not is astounding. And I once had an argument with a guy, guest on my show when I did the show in New York, and he tells me, it's a lot cheaper to keep someone in jail on death row than it is to actually to kill them. And I thought, I'm not making an argument for either way on this, but you're going to tell me it costs more money to kill someone than it does to actually keep them alive and have them in prison for 30 years or 40 years or 50 years or whatever it is. And he was making the case, yes, and obviously this is, it's fake, phony fraud. The math that they're using is fuzzy. And it's because they're ultimately it's a business, right? They want to make money on this. That's why they have private prisons and whatnot. And all of that, I think, needs to end. If we're going to open businesses, it shouldn't be a prison. That's my opinion. Walter, thanks for your call, brother. Godspeed to you. I wish you the best in everything. Keep calling whenever you get a chance. Big shout out to Walter in Indianapolis, Indiana, streaming at richvaldez.com. I appreciate you, brother. And folks, I'm going to pause right here. We're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
America's more prosperous, and Americans are safer today than we're under Donald Trump. Trump continues to lie about crime in America, like everything else. Guess what? On his watch, the murder rate went up 30%, the biggest increase in history. Meanwhile, we made the largest investment, Kamala and I, in public safety ever. Now, the murder rate is falling faster than any time in history. Violent crime has dropped to the lowest level of more than 50 years. And crime will keep coming down when we put a prosecutor in the Oval Office instead of a convicted felon.
Well, that's Joe El Baboso Biden trying to do a 1-2 punch on El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. But what's interesting here is he's talking about crime and saying that Trump oversaw the biggest increase in crime. Now, Trump got to oversee a lot of things, right? COVID had a big part of this. When you had this massive defund the police movement, Democrats defunding police all across the country at the local level, right? Can anybody here in good faith, Democrat or not, raise your hand if you think that Donald Trump was responsible for the mayhem that occurred in Minneapolis after the George Floyd killing, when he was murdered by the cop? Trump had nothing to do with that, right? I mean, people are looking at him saying, can you send in the troops? Can you send in whatever? But the reality is they have a governor, Tim Walz, right? Tiananmen Tim. He's the one that allowed the place to burn. He's the one that allowed the police stations to be overrun and for the summer of love to continue. Now, what's interesting is, of course, crime skyrocketed on Trump's watch because you had BLM, the burning, the looting, the murdering. All of that stuff happened for sure. But there was also a bunch of cops that were out sick. Crime skyrocketed in COVID. And there's another interesting thing that happened. Let us not forget that more than 6,000 police agencies, right? There's of the 22,000 that did not report crime data to the federal database that the FBI runs. And that's a fact, right? That was reported. We had several guests on that here. You can just look that up. I'm looking at Newsweek here just as an example, right? The FBI statistics, murders were down by 26%, rapes were down by 25%, robbery down by 17.8%. Everything's down, but the problem is these statistics make up less than 45%. That's less than half of the violent crimes that were committed in the U.S. and only 32% of property crimes. Victims are not reporting these incidents as often because they don't believe anyone will be punished because of all these bail laws. On top of that, you have these 6,000 agencies that didn't report data at all. So you've got about 8% of total violent crime in cities that result in actual arrest. Just look at New York and all the news that comes out of there every single day for proof to see that crime pays right now. That's why you have gangs that are being emptied from prisons in Venezuela making their way right to New York because they know that the getting is good right here, right now. And there's several underlying issues with the crime data. There are fewer experienced officers on the street after these Democrats went crazy taking away their qualified immunity. Many of them said, we're quitting. You had 2,000 or 3,000 in New York City alone that decided to retire or move on in one way or another. This creates a problem where people are going to clearly, take things into their own hands. And I don't mean the citizenry being vigilantes. I mean the criminals going after the citizenry. And that's clearly what's going on. You've got that. You've got people that are not going down to the police station to fill out forms because they realize nothing's going to happen. Cops will tell you that nothing is going to happen. For example, a felony assault is going to be pled down to a misdemeanor in court, and that's not going to be included in the FBI data.
So you have all of that with the pro-crime progressive prosecutors. So they try to sit there and pretend like the crime has disappeared. No, the crime isn't being reported. Doesn't mean it's not occurring. And I think everybody knows that. The videos are all over the place. I can't think of a time in history where I saw more people going into Walmarts than any other place and just walking out with shopping carts and garbage bags filled with goods and pushing security guards to the side. This is a phenomenon we only see now during the Biden years. Yet he's going to claim that crime is down. Of course it's not down. They changed the laws to say that if you steal $900 or less, it's no longer a felony. So what happened? People started stealing $900 or less and bringing smaller sized garbage bags to commit their crimes. What happened? You had Target, Walmart, and so many others. Was it Bloomingdale's or maybe Lord and Taylor that shut down in San Francisco and all these other places, and they're closing hundreds and hundreds of locations across the country. Why? Because crime is down. Because Biden's doing such a fantastic job. Come on. The proof is in the pudding, people, and we all know that. Anyway, let's go to Angelica. She is in Logan, Utah, KVNU. Angelica, go right ahead.
Thank you, Rich, for taking my call. And I was born and raised in Germany, and for many years when I came to America, I was embarrassed about having been raised in Germany because of the crimes that were committed against the Jewish people and others during the war. And I am just so upset at that. The campaign right now, part of it is the abortion of the innocent babies. And it is just so wrong that we actually want to build a campaign on the blood and the bones of those babies. And they can give babies up for adoption. My son and his wife couldn't have a baby. And a young woman who was not married gave the baby up for adoption, and he's in our family. And we're so grateful for that. And I just think we need to stand up for the rights of the unborn, because those who are killing those babies, they will be held accountable before God one day.
Yeah, I agree with you, Angelica. And, and God bless you and congratulations on your family growing with the addition of the new baby. I think you're right. Building a campaign on the blood of those that were lost to abortion should not be how we run a political campaign, honestly. I don't think saying, we're going to be giving free abortions and free vasectomies, it should be a draw to come to this convention. That's just my perspective. Listen, they do what they're going to do, right? You know me, I protect people's speech and their liberty, and I don't want to see that. I don't like it at all, but if that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing, and we, the people, have a right to decide with our vote. And all I know is that arena I'm looking at, it looks like it's packed to the hilt. There's a lot of people that are happily there to support this abortion and vasectomy for free and everything else that they're peddling, more government spending, etc. Angelica, thanks for the call. KVNU. Folks, we're coming right back. It's Rich Valdez, Open Phone America. Don't go anywhere.
Now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And there is some audio that I want you to hear because very interesting. Obama's former senior advisor, David Axelrod, he was on CNN yesterday, and he says if the election were held today, it may well be President Trump that wins. Listen to this.
She has made extraordinary progress. We were all in Milwaukee a month ago, and, there was euphoria there and a sense that this race was over, that they were going to win by a landslide, perhaps sweep in big majorities in the House and Senate, and things have changed dramatically. But this is still a very competitive race. If the election were today, I'm not sure who would win. And I think it may well be President Trump because it's an electoral college fight.
Right.
And in those battleground states.
Yeah, we were looking at national numbers at the top of this program. That's, I mean, it's misleading.
And I've said several times here that, you know, for a Democrat to win those battleground states, they have to have a significant lead in the Electoral College. Remember, Joe Biden won by 7 million votes nationally last time, and a margin of 45,000 votes or 44,000 votes in the three closest battleground states combined. So she's right to be telling people it's good to be enthusiastic. That enthusiasm is really, really important for the Democratic Party, but you have to turn that into energetic action in order to win the election. And I think that's going to be part of what you hear here.
That's David Axelrod, again, senior advisor to Obama. And he's telling it like it is there. That's the truth. He's saying this is an electoral college fight. And this is where this is how he won in 2016. This is why he should have won in 2020. And why it's my opinion that he will likely win in 2024. Because he is leading on that front. Kamala Harris doesn't appeal to folks as much as the media will tell us that she does. And this is not a popularity contest. It's a competition of states, right? The Electoral College. And she has to win the Electoral College. And Axelrod, you know, he doesn't always shoot straight, but he does half of the time. and this is one of those times where he's telling the truth. They have to do a better job in order to beat Trump. And Trump, I think, needs to stay on message. And it's not about attacking her personally. It's about attacking her horrible record. And he's doing it. Today, he was out in, where was he today? In Pennsylvania? Is that right? Let me see. York, Pennsylvania. And there's a clip I'm looking for. I'm scrolling. I'm almost there. All right, there we go. I passed it. And he, let me see, he says that she wants illegals to vote. This, I think, is a policy position, right? This is truly what's happening. You got the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, saying he's going to be giving driver's licenses. These driver's licenses automatically register people to vote in most situations. So why should we expect that that's not going to happen? Listen to Trump.
She wants to give free health care for millions of illegal aliens and give them all citizenship into the United States immediately. And she then wants to sign them up for Medicare and Social Security. And she wants them to vote illegally if possible. Any way they can vote. They don't care.
Any way they can vote. She doesn't care. She doesn't care at all. He also focused on another policy issue, which is how he handed the Biden-Harris team a surging economy. Listen to this.
When I left office, I handed Kamala and crooked Joe Biden a surging economy with no inflation. You had no inflation. You had everything was good. Great wages, no inflation. Now you have inflation at levels that I don't believe anyone's ever seen before. The 30-year mortgage rate was 2.6%, but it was actually closer to 1.9.
Now, he's 100% right. So if again, the fluctuation in the Trump inflation, as best I could ever see it, was between 1.25 and 1.4. That was the fluctuation. This crazy number that we have now, 8, 10, even 3, if that's what they're going to say, is more than a 100% increase from the Trump years. That shouldn't be acceptable to anybody. Anyway, I'm going to go to the phones because we've talked about a lot of things tonight, not the least of which was the digital strategy of the Harris campaign, some talk about how Hamas dissed America and Netanyahu yet again on a ceasefire deal, and why Christians should vote for Trump. Let's go to John in Burlington, Vermont, WVMT. John, go right ahead.
Good morning, Rich.
Hola,
I've been
sir.
on hold for 45 minutes, so I think I could go in 3 different directions, but let's just stay with the last topic you just mentioned, and that's evangelicals, Christians, voting for Donald Trump. Now, I'm a practicing Catholic. I don't know what your denominational preference is, nor do I care. But could you tell me, I'm not a Bible-quoting Christian, But could you give me 3 characteristics of Donald Trump that exemplify what Jesus Christ taught in the New Testament?
Well, sure. First of all, I think he's forgiving, right? I think God, the two commandments of the New Testament are to love God and love people. And I think this administration of Trump that he had was one where he really showed that to be true. I think there was a tremendous amount of compassion during COVID. I think there was a tremendous amount of compassion with foreign policy, where look at Biden right now in the midst of 2 different wars that I would say he partially instigated and allowed to occur. Trump didn't have any of that. He had the Abraham Accords, making peace with Muslims and Jews in the Middle East. Again, something he gets zero credit for, but something that was huge. Moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Again, a big move for something that happened in the Middle East, a big move in the region. And again, with peace. So I think the peaceful part of that, those are 2. The third thing I think is, again, having compassion on the people, all right, allowing people to retain more of their money with the Trump tax break that we had, the tax cuts that were there that are sunsetting, I think, this year. That was yet another act of, I'm going to say, not kindness, but a reprieve, giving a reprieve to the people. But while the question that you asked me was a setup and I took the bait, the reality is I would never look at any candidate and say, does this candidate exemplify Jesus in any way? How are they personifying the teachings of Christ? Because, again, I'm not looking to elect a pastor or a preacher or a priest. I'm looking to elect a president, someone that can be the chief executive of our federal government and be a good steward of the resources that are there. Now, I wish there would have been less spending from the Trump administration and the Biden administration alike. But by and large, nothing but victories, in my opinion, came out of the Trump administration. And that's something I think many Americans would like to see a repeat of. So irrespective of one's faith, it's clear that the policies that Trump espoused and promoted and brought into law were good. And if we want to take that approach of, looking through the eyes of an evangelical Christian, most evangelical Christians tend to be pro-life. I don't think we've seen a more pro-life president than Donald Trump, who put more pro-life justices on the bench, who in effect overturned Roe versus Wade. If that's not a win for the evangelical Christians by way of Trump, I don't know what is, John.
Am I still on?
Of course. It's your turn. Go right ahead.
Okay, yeah. No, I guess my question was in terms of Donald Trump himself, in terms of his behavior and his what we have seen in terms of his values. Why would evangelical Christians?
I think I just spent about 3 minutes laying out the case of why they would support him. It just behooves. Again, the biggest movement, I think, for evangelical Christians, the biggest movement is the pro-life movement. There has been no bigger champion on the pro-life movement than Donald Trump. So, period, the end. That's the answer to your question. But everything else I mentioned, I think, plays a part. And ultimately, the overarching premise that I'm trying to convey to you is I don't think that people are voting. You can use your worldview to vote and still not elect the Pope, right? That's not the goal. The goal here is not to elect someone based on any of those things. The goal, I think, is to elect someone that's going to be good for the country, someone that's going to govern fairly for the Muslims in Dearborn, someone that's going to govern fairly for the Jews in Brooklyn, New York, and in Boca Raton, someone who's going to govern fairly for the atheists and agnostics that are in California and New York City. That's what our country is about, someone that is fair. And ultimately, I think Trump proved that time and again during his presidency. John, thank you for your call. I'll take a pause right here. WVMT, shout out to you guys. If you disagree, we will get you on a lot quicker than we got John on. It's just been a busy night with the DNC coverage. More to come straight ahead. Your calls and more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5787. 833-4-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
It's hard to remember this, but before we had the real black president, remember when Bill Clinton was supposedly the first black president? Well, Tim Walz is going to be the first Chinese vice president of our country. When he broke out in Mandarin with me like 5 years ago, my jaw dropped. I said, really?
That is Congressman Mark Takano from California. He's a Democrat speaking at the Democrat National Convention, the LGBTQ caucus meeting in Chicago today. And recalling when they said Bill Clinton was the first black president, of course, he says that Tim Walz is going to be the first Chinese vice president. I knew I was on to something when I called him Tiananmen Tim. And clearly, even the Democrats agree with me on that one. I want to continue with your calls and your reactions to everything else that's going on. Let us continue with your calls. Let's go to Holly calling from Cleveland, Ohio, WNIR. Holly, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
It's so nice to talk to you. You're such a smart guy. I really enjoy listening to you. I give you an A+ and a gold star tonight. But anyhow, the gentleman that just spoke to you before about, Trump's moral compass, and you defended Trump quite well. But there was one thing I always was impressed with, was when the members from the historically black colleges would come to the White House every year to gain funding for the colleges. When they came to Trump, okay, they went to him for the first year. They came back, and then Trump sees them. He says, well, what are you guys doing here, from what I remember him saying? And they said, well, we come every year. And he basically dismissed that and said, no, you don't have to keep doing that. I believe he signed off where that funding would continue on without them having to keep coming back every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah, it was some more funding than had ever been provided to HBCUs ever. Matter of fact, one of the speakers at his rally about 2 weeks ago, Michaela Montgomery, she spoke to that, and she's kind of she's one of those. I'm going to call her an ambassador, if you will, that's been out there beating the drum for this, because many people forget, and she hasn't forgotten, because she's with one of those schools, or graduating or graduated from one of those schools recently. So yeah, excellent point, and that was part of what I was trying to express, and I'm glad you made this point, because I think there was a number of occasions where Trump, again, was very, very compassionate in what he did, and more compassionate than I would have been by every standard. Honestly, I think he has a lot more wisdom and patience for a lot of things than I do. It's a good thing I'm not president, and his approach to peace is also better than me. Right? I'm probably more along the lines of Lindsey Graham, if I'm being honest. So I think that there was a lot of Trump that was compassionate, and I agree with you. Now, what do you think of this DNC, Holly?
Well, I didn't watch it. I don't know. All I do is I did see Hillary on there. I was flipping stations, and I saw her.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, either she's using Plexiderm or she had a good plastic surgeon.
Yeah,
Sorry,
right.
I couldn't resist. But I just passed it up. I don't know. I've listened to enough of stuff that I can't listen to stuff anymore. I really can't. It's quite difficult.
Yeah, I had a doctor on the other night, and he said, if you don't want to be stressed out and you don't want to have anxiety, don't listen to the news. Don't watch TV anymore. And I thought that's pretty funny, but it seems to be true. Holly in Cleveland, Ohio, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it.
Your heart.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you. And we're going to continue with your calls. Let's see. Where do we go? Well, if we pause here, we'll go to Montana, we'll go to Idaho, and we'll do a couple of more calls on the way back. Folks, the number 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue. And, you know, there is a popular theme in the Bible that is fear not, or, you know, do not be afraid, right? And I say that with reference to the clip I played from David Axelrod saying if the election were held today, it might well be Trump that wins. I think it's what he said exactly. And that doesn't mean we should take anything for granted. I think, like Trump said the day he got shot in his ear, fight, fight, fight. We need to fight. We need to play like we're behind. We have to treat this election extraordinarily seriously and vigorously go after the middle. I doubt that will ever change the mind of anyone that's on the far left or who's made up their mind. That's not the target, right? The goal is to reach the people who are undecided, that are like, I don't know, they're all the same to me. Those people, those are the people you want to talk to. So make sure you're talking to them. And quick plug before we get to your calls. I went to for years, I've actually gone on and off to this church in Rutherford, New Jersey. For a while, I was in Lyndhurst. It's called Church Alive. It used to be called Good Shepherd Church years ago. And that was kind of when I started going, 2012, 2013, and then again, 2014, you know, through the years. I've been there, you know, probably like 30 times in the last, 10 years or so, 12 years. And it's a great church, and it's grown a lot, and it's a good vibe. It's one of those more modern churches, different from the Pentecostal church I'm kind of used to going to. But I wanted to give them a plug because I went, and they had an amazing sermon this weekend, and really invigorating. You know, it's rare that I go to church and I think it's amazing. I usually go, wow, that's pretty good. You know, or like, oh, I got to do better. Oh, that was really good. But this was absolutely amazing, really riveting. And, if you're ever in the area, check them out. It's called Church Alive, Rutherford, New Jersey. Anyway, now that I'm done with the plug for Church Alive, I want to go to Boise, Idaho, and check in with Paul, KBFI. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Rich.
Yes, sir.
Stellar program once again.
Oh,
you never let
brother.
us down.
You're a stellar
Always
caller, and I
top.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay. I can kind of sum up the difference between what Kamala Harris and that snow job that they're trying to throw over the top of us and Donald Trump. One is when I go to sleep tonight after this show is over, I'm not going to have the pit of my stomach churning, but because of Donald Trump, I know that he's the man that we need for the job of President of the United States. Kamala's going to give us nothing but problems after problems after problems. So I can foresee them happen. I remember what it was like to have socialism in the Soviet Union and how we had to battle it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not fun.
And it looks like it's making a comeback. Paul in Boise, I want to thank you for your call. KBFI, thank you. Frank in Evergreen, Montana, KOFI, thank you. Everybody else that's on hold, I'm sorry. I will get to you tomorrow. I appreciate you all. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Hasta la próxima. I am Rich Valdez.